The college football coaching carousel is winding down. The Bears have almost clinched the top pick of the draft. We've got more Senior Bowl acceptances and underclassmen declarations to talk about. And Travis May is going to join us to talk about all things offense in the 2022 NFL draft class. All that and more coming up next on the Draft Countdown Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown Podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Bosarge, joined as always as my co-host, Shane P. Hallam. Shane, we are 133 days, 22 hours, 58 minutes, 17 seconds away from the 2024 NFL Draft.
We get bowl games kicking off this weekend. The NFL regular season's winding down. Fantasy playoffs for me, so it's an exciting time.
I feel like that was a dig. Little jab at me. I'm in one fantasy league and I didn't make the playoffs.
Look, if you're in 50 like me, then you definitely make the playoffs in some.
I'm sure I would. Yep, we're definitely in draft season now. Myself and our partner Pigskin Paul Gilmet both got our Senior Bowl credential acceptances in today. I'll be covering 2 bowl games for Draft Countdown starting this weekend at the Arnell Carriers New Orleans Bowl. I'll be there, as well as the following Saturday at the 68 Ventures Bowl here in Mobile. So looking forward to both of those bowl games.
Yeah. Look, that's exciting. I'm excited for you to experience the Superdome there and have fun. It'll probably be a good game too.
Man in the chat, Sonny Money says it's December. He's ashamed at how many mock drafts he's read so far. That's nothing to be ashamed of.
You can't read enough. Let's be honest.
Yeah. We'll remind everybody, if you're watching live in the chat and you have a question for myself or Shane, we will answer it at the end of the show. If you have a question for Travis, pop it. Travis May is going to join us a little bit later. If you have a question for him, pop it in there and we'll ask him while he's joins us a little bit later. If you're following along on Twitter, ask a question there at Draft Countdown. Or if you're a member of our Discord, you can ask a question there. If you're not a member of our Discord, we ask that you go ahead and go to draftcountdown.com, top right corner of the search bar, click the link there to join the Discord. We've been talking about college football transfers and stuff for basically the last 2 weeks straight in there. It's been good stuff, as always.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been fun, so I hope people will hop in the Discord a bit and get in there.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So I mentioned the college football coaching carousel, which is something we've led the show with the last what seems seemingly 3 or 4 weeks now. It's winding down a little bit. We filled the final 3 head coaching spots over the last week, but that meant 1 opened up as a result. But we'll start at Duke. And they've replaced Mike Elko with another defensive-minded coach. They've hired Manny Diaz, who was Penn State's defensive coordinator, former head coach as well.
Yeah, I like the hire. I mean, Manny Diaz deserves another chance. Has really killed it for Penn State. So I like that for Duke. I think it's a pretty solid hire.
I feel like James Madison replaced their head coach with a pretty solid hire. They go to the FCS ranks and bring in Holy Cross head coach Bob Chesney to be their new head man.
I'm always for going down to the FCS, getting a great FCS coach. I think it usually works out more than it doesn't. So I do like that hire as well.
seems that way. And speaking of, in my opinion, home run hires here, Tulane replaced Willie Fritz with Troy head coach John Summerall, who has just done a hell of a job with the Trojans the last 2 seasons.
I was a little surprised he didn't get a call higher. Tulane's not a bad job, but I thought maybe a bigger school would go after John Summerall. Maybe we're talking about that in a couple of years.
There were rumors that Mississippi State was in on him, so it's didn't work out, I guess. But that leaves now the only FBS head coaching job that is open is Troy's now, because they have to replace Summerall, but not at this level. But North Dakota State head coach left to be with the linebackers coach at Southern Cal, so that's a huge job opening up now at the FCS level.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they fill that one and see if they can keep kind of that dynasty going a little bit there at the NDSU.
Yep. So moving on now, we'll look at our weekly look at the top 10 picks currently as they sit here in the NFL draft. The last thing on the coaching, Sonny brings up Lance Leipold coming up to Kansas from Wisconsin Whitewater to Buffalo to Kansas. So not exactly straight FCS jump up, but in the ballpark there. But yes, the draft top 10, and the Bears have almost locked it up now, right? They've basically got a 2-game lead here with 4 games to go by way of the Panthers losing their 6th in a row. They're now 1-12. Bears have their pick. So yeah, that's pretty much, it feels like it's all but wrapped, right?
I think it's going to be tough for Carolina to win 2 more games, let alone 3 more games, and definitively get above. Even right now, with strength of schedule, they'd still be first if they tied. So they basically need to win 3 of the last 4. It seems like the Bears will have the first overall pick.
Yeah. New England currently 3-10 has a 0.03 strength of schedule advantage over Arizona, who sits at 3-10. New England playing out the string here with Belichick.
Yeah, I mean, it seems the rumors now that Belichick will be gone, and that likely means a whole new direction and a whole new quarterback, like you and I did in the mock draft last week.
Anxious to see Washington picking 4th. They're the 0-4-9 team. We have 6 teams currently sitting at 5-8, led by the Chicago Bears, who have the lowest strength of schedule. Then the Las Vegas Raiders, who managed to score 0 points against Minnesota last week, losing 3-0. Heaven, God forbid anybody actually watch that debacle. The Jets currently at 5-8. The Giants at 5-8. Tennessee at 5-8. And the Chargers at 5-8. But I anticipate they're going to lose a lot more now without Justin Herbert.
Look, Easton Stick. That's a name from the past, from the NFL draft past.
And North Dakota State.
Yeah. So that's exciting. The Giants, Tommy DeVito's won 3 in a row.
3 out of 4. Tommy DeVito's won as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Maybe we joked him off a little too soon there, Shane.
I guess so. I mean, I don't think so, but I think there's other things that are winning the Giants these games. But he is fun to watch. So I think we'll still have a little more shakeup there in the bottom end of the top 10 before all said and done.
Yeah, Zach Wilson got a dub. So did Will Levis. Got the win this past week as well. Still not a Will Levis guy, but we'll see. The NFC South teams are at 11-12. The Bengals currently hold the last non-playoff spot until Pittsburgh just continues to fall down.
Pittsburgh is winning out, and they'll get in over the Bengals. It's okay.
Pittsburgh. You don't even believe
they got the bad losses out of the way. Now it's just Mitch Trubisky leading wins.
There's no way you can say that with a straight face.
Like Tomlin's got to get to 9 wins, so we're winning 2 of the last 4. Don't worry.
We'll see. Not buying it.
Keeping the streak going.
Not buying it at all. So let's bring in our guest tonight. He's the returning champion to the program. He's a data guy through and through. He hosts the College to Canton podcast. and RotoViz Radio, formerly of Mojo. We had him on last year. We're going to bring him back now. Let's talk to our good buddy, Travis May. Travis, man, how the hell are you?
Doing all right. Glad to be on the show and just talk some 2024 NFL draft and prospects. And yeah, I guess I used to deny that I was a data guy for a little while, because when I first jumped into this space, I definitely wasn't really that first and foremost. I was more of like a film kind of approach to things. But as I kind of gained some experience and really gained an interest in pursuing data analytics as like part of my career, I don't think I can lie and just say I'm not a data guy at this point. So
yeah, you got to own it. You got to own it at this point.
Got to lean into it. It's fine. I'm team both, by the way, in the films versus analytics debate. But yeah, I'm a data nerd. That's fine.
About halfway through the season, I messaged Shane. I said, as soon as we've got time after we get through this, I said, we're getting Travis on. But one of the things I look forward to the most as we were going through the season was your QBR model. And I was just fascinated by the movement of it week in, week out. And, it started with guys like Shadur Sanders and everything up near the top, and they kind of piddled out. But it got to the end where Jaden Daniels, the quarterback at LSU, who just won the Heisman Trophy, deservedly so this past week, just a massive, just head and shoulders above everybody else in your model. Talk to us about how your QBR model works and what we can kind of get from it.
Sure. I mean, where this came from is for the past year and a half or so, I've been building out this sports stock market idea for Mojo. And so I had been, tracking player prices and career long projections for all these players. And, week to week, we'd see some different action with people coming in and buying and selling stuff. And I wanted to create like a quick and easy calculatable model that I could essentially use as like, guardrails for myself to make sure that my own process in terms of like what goes into the pricing was matching up, as well as to, hey, is the action make sense with where they're probably projected to go with draft capital wise, a few other things. But I wanted to just build like something quick, 15, 16 different variables into one model that could help kind of project, expected draft capital. So I created a simpler proxy version of what I'll do in the postseason anyway, that I could just update weekly and get a better idea of like, okay, where are these profiles really trending every single week, and not just quarterbacks, but running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and not for work, but just for my own kicks and giggles, other defensive player models too. But the passing side takes some volume metrics, but a lot of efficiency metrics, and piles them all into one score. And the average for FBS quarterbacks is anchored around 50. So like an average quarterback score will be 50, and like almost like perfect elite type level score will be around 100. And if you're, Iowa's quarterback, you'll figure out a way to have a negative score. But Jaden Daniels essentially just broke it. Like I've done this for a few years now, and he just broke it. Like he's at 135 to end the season. Like and it's because it's comparing all these variables to every other quarterback in the sport. And so it kind of scales to this particular season's level of play. For example, the COVID season efficiency was crazy off the charts. And so like if we compared that to this year, the scores would look better. But this compares it to just this season to help, get rid of some of the noisy mess that happens when you try to compare players from different eras to one another and things like that. So, kind of gives us a good idea of where these players rank analytically speaking. Simple enough.
So, yeah, no. I think it's a good explanation. I want you to break down further a couple of the potential first round picks, I guess, in this draft from a quarterback perspective, how they did in your model, what kind of trepidation you have, right? I mean, we've seen Caleb Williams have a couple of those games that didn't go so well. People were starting to, get worried. Drake May just declared for the draft. People are still high on guys like JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. Where do they kind of fit in, and what's your opinion, kind of quick and dirty?
Sure. I mean, like with Drake May, this year actually was not great. I think a lot of people didn't watch a lot of UNC football this year, and so you might not have kind of realized that Drake May struggled for a good portion of the year, especially early on. And so he actually, among the potential first round draft picks in this class, had the worst kind of analytical profile of like the top 6 or so that kind of are in the mix, which is surprising to some, I think. But in all reality, like comparing his profile this year to last year, he was like number 1 or 2 or 3 at worst, basically all last season by the same measure. So when a quarterback has a season like that already on the resume in like year 2, I'm much less concerned about a slight deviance from that result. You've already proven to me that you can be an elite prospect. And so if it's less than perfect because 2 or 3 bad games are dragging a season down, I'm not as concerned. He finished like fringe, like top 12 in the country, which is still not bad, right? And so, especially in a season where we saw quite a few quarterbacks just get off to ridiculous starts that kind of amped up their profiles even down the stretch. So Drake May had really the only concerning marks because he wouldn't, if this was his peak, analytically speaking, it wouldn't really project. He wouldn't really project to be a first round quarterback. But guys like JJ McCarthy, he kind of dropped off a tad down the stretch. Michael Penix had a few rough games, but even those guys were still top 6 or 7 in the country by this particular quarterback model. Caleb Williams had a couple of down games, still 5th overall in this model. And then Bo Nix, number 2, Jaden Daniels, number 1. And I think those 6 are the ones that we're really looking at to get early round capital, at least seem to be the locks to get that kind of range of capital. So I'm not really concerned, analytically speaking, with any of these guys. I know a couple of them are older, a couple of them have health issues, but I think there's a really good shot we see 6 guys come off the board in the top, 64 picks. I'm not necessarily sold on the fact that we'll have more than even 3 first-round picks, but I like the profiles of the top 6 and a few others that are intriguing.
Last thing on the quarterbacks I want to talk about. We talk about the Senior Bowl pretty much every week here. There's 3 quarterbacks that have accepted invites so far. Mm-hmm. And I know Spencer Rattler has not been kind on the model as I've been kind of tracking that this season. I have reasons as to why I think that is, but talk about him as well as Joe Milton, who just accepted an invite to this week, as well as Michael Pratt from Tulane, who accepted earlier.
Absolutely. So Joe Milton actually kind of started slow and was less than perfect, had some really poor decisions in early weeks throughout the year. And so he was in like the 20s, 30s in terms of where he ranked among Power 5 quarterbacks most of the season. And a couple late season games kind of helped his profile overall. So he finished actually 20th in this particular QBR model. So that sounds like it's like, okay, 20th, that's not bad, but it's actually behind guys like Grant Mertz. So it's still like, it's not like he was killing it by the numbers that seem to matter when projecting quarterbacks. But what he has going for him is he has that rocket he can chuck the ball over them there mountains, which is nice. But can he do so accurately? After like 6 years, I still don't think I have the answer to that. And so I'm not really confident he gets decent capital whatsoever. There's going to be his fanboy section that just sees the arm strength and really pumps him up and says he's day 2 worthy or first round worthy. I even saw like a former scout pumping him up just like last week. I'm like, guys, no, sorry. I'm not gonna lie to you, So, and then Spencer Rattler, he actually did not finish strong. He was 30th among Power 5 quarterbacks, which is a far cry from what he was, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. Analytically speaking, it looked like, hey, if he follows this trajectory, he's on first round pace. Like he and Sam Howell were supposed to be like the 2022 first round picks. We are so far removed from that, aren't we? So he has questions when it comes to pressure. He has questions when it comes to a lack of upside in any regard other than the way that he kind of spins it. Looks pretty when it comes out of his hand, but by the numbers, it's kind of gross. Like he's had a couple of decent halves against good teams. Like he had a couple, like a good half against Georgia, a good half here and there, but he just can't seem to put it all together. So I'm not sure he's going to go very early. Michael Pratt, though, is fun. I was kind of doubting him for quite some time, just honestly. But among G5 quarterbacks, he was top 5 by most meaningful measures that you want to throw out there. So really impressed by him down the stretch, even if it wasn't with a bunch of volume. Like he's not going to, he was never going to be in the Heisman mix because he played for Tulane. But also he just was never going to have the volume because they don't play that way. He doesn't check the ball 40 plus times a game. He doesn't run the ball 20 times a game either. But he's a good game manager that should be on an NFL roster. But if this is as strong as the senior ball crop at quarterback gets, that's a little concerning, considering what we've seen in the past.
I'm not unconvinced that if Rattler had average offensive line play, he would have been a lot more efficient this year.
Yeah.
But we can't go back and fix that now, can we?
No, definitely not. It seems like he's come a long way in terms of like just growing up, and if you listen to him in interviews, he seems like he's a better teammate than he might have once been. But I agree that there were offensive line issues, but he just never put it all together, and so that's a problem.
Like, speaking of offensive line issues, so Travis, I'm bringing this up now. You mostly shared this more in a league chat that we're in together for our pinnacle of Devi Fantasy League, but I know you have taken a look at QB sack rates and versus like pressure rates, and you've talked a little bit in there about how sacks can be turned into a quarterback stat. I want you to talk about that a little bit, and if anyone's jumped out to you, and then I got to give you a little platform to talk Shadur Sanders and the I don't know, pop culture tool that Dion and Shadur have been this year.
Sure. I mean, just up front, like with sacks, I think people are coming around to the fact that quarterbacks can kind of own responsibility with sacks. I think that's just kind of a given. Like when you watch football, like, man, he probably shouldn't have taken that sack. He didn't need to take that sack there. But how do you quantify that? Like, how do you measure that? And so when you really rip through the data, look at offensive line quality play from a player to player basis, and where sack ownership really comes from, in terms of like allowed pressure rate of a collective offensive line unit or a certain side of the offensive line. Like I don't have access to a bunch of data that can make it really fun. But NFL teams actually have the spatial tracking data where they can really kind of dig into where sack ownership comes from and where it lives, and how to assess quarterback play, kind of looking at like a 4 or 5 piece matrix of like where it happens in the backfield, where the blown pressure was from, and things like that. I just don't have all the data to do that, but tried to create some kind of proxy where I created a model that's tried to account for the percent of a sack that can be attributed to a quarterback, or the probability of a sack happening on any given play anyway, that could be attributed to a quarterback. And so I built out a model that kind of adjusted for a few variables, like the overall total dropbacks, allowed pressure rate of the offensive lineman in front of him, built-in variables like time to throw, the actual pressure percentage, some other things to kind of build out a sack over expected probability model, and learn a whole lot about like where both college and NFL passers might be a liability in terms of the sack and sack avoidance game. But just to kind of put some names to the numbers, I won't get into a bunch of the rates here, but like why I think I'm not super high on Riley Leonard as a passer, but why I think a lot of people are really into Riley Leonard is that he's an elite sack avoider. So like for instance, like his pressure rate at Duke this past season, I know it's a smaller sample than normal, but his pressure rate was over 40%. So over 40% of his snaps, he was getting pressured, which is actually top 20 in the wrong way in the country, right? You don't want to be facing pressure over 40% of the time. But even so, he only took 9 sacks at all, and his pressure to sack rate was under 11%, which is ridiculous. Like, to put it in perspective with like somebody who still has sack issues today in the NFL, Sam Howell's pressure to sack rate is consistently above 25%, and Riley Leonard's was around 10 or 11, and that's pretty consistent throughout his career as well. So like, if you can avoid sacks despite the pressure and adjusting for offensive quality in front of you, like the offensive line issues that can be had at a place like Duke, if you can show that you can be the opposite of a liability, perhaps a plus side, because you add value with your legs and avoid sacks, you avoid negative plays. One, your expected points added profile is going to be amazing, like on a per play basis, and you're not going to be an issue. You're not going to bring the offense down. You're not going to be the reason why drives end. Like that's why he was really good. That's why prior to this season, like Bo Nix was actually really underrated. He was really good at that, even though he didn't have to really face pressure this year. But like there are just certain players who, when you adjust for key variables, you can see that they avoid sacks at an elite rate. And there are some players that bring it upon themselves.
Yeah.
And so by extension, I think that we could get into the Shedeur thing, but
well, I just want to open it up in case you wanted to go on your soapbox against Shedeur Sanders.
Sure, and it's not really against Shedeur. He was so funny. The whole situation was hilarious just to kind of follow this year, because like this hype, the 3-0 thing, and everyone's like, they're just the next best thing, and that people legitimately betting stupid amounts on long odds for them to like win the actual national championship. and it's just like, guys, oh man, this is so sad. I hate to break it to you, but this is like smoke and mirrors. And it was, and they fell apart and went 1-8 down the stretch. And that was largely due not just to the offensive line's fault, but it was actually in many cases Shedeur's issue. Whether you want to point to his time to throw, which actually did improve in the last few weeks because he was chucking to get rid of it. But or you want to talk about the fact that he just is horrible at avoiding the pressure, where he just kind of like is not great at pocket manipulation that shows up consistently. Or if you just want to dig into the numbers, when we talk about the offensive line play in front of him, people wanted to hate on the offensive line like it was the worst one in the country. There were at least 25 to 30 offensive lines that were objectively better at both running or like rushing and offensive, like pass blocking, than Colorado, like 25 or 30 among FBS teams, and several P5 teams that should have been better. But people wanted to heap on this blame and just never address the fact that Shedeur had a ridiculous pressure to sack rate. He took way too many sacks. I mean, like I know that the sack volume was amped up because they ran a crap ton of plays too, but like 50 sacks on the year is pretty horrific. And when his pressure percentage wasn't great, it was like 36%. Average for FBS teams is like around 31%. So he actually wasn't like crazy far off, like outside like a normal distribution of like expectations for his pressure rate. But even when he'd face pressure, he still took sacks at an alarming rate, well over 25%, like upwards, like close to 30% for the majority of the season. And it's just like one play in particular. I can't remember which game it was, but he took a sack for negative 21 yards on 4th down and tried to chuck it and did not get the ball back to the line of scrimmage. So it was like a grounding penalty. Like it was like this ridiculous like reversed punt type play where it basically went backwards like 30 yards because of him just refusing to get rid of the ball. And that just was like, man, that summed up his entire season right there. And so I just, there's so many excuses that people want to throw around for how Shedeur's season went, how Colorado's season went. But man, he didn't get like any of the blame for like most of college, like in most of all of college media. It was like, oh, Shedeur's still amazing. He's perfect. He's Deion's son. He's going to be a 1st-round pick. Like, you guys are drunk. Like, that is not what's happening. So, like by any measure, I don't know what I'm looking at, but yeah. So there's in summation, there are players who are a problem when it comes to the sack game, and unless something changes drastically, he's not even going to be a day 2 pick because of that issue.
There's a tape right there. I love it. It still amazes me that like the 5th highest watched game this year was a Friday night game between Colorado and Colorado State. Just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think it was like the Saturday late game, wasn't it?
It was a Friday night. It was like a 9 o'clock kickoff on a Friday night.
It was Friday. I see. It all blends together because
or was it Saturday night?
I don't even know.
It doesn't matter.
All I know is I never went to sleep before like 2, just because of my the job this year. Tracking all these games and all the players and all the stocks and everything, and I'm having to track literally everything. And I'm like, guys, please, this is really going to overtime. What am I doing?
Like, please no. We don't need more of that.
I'm so tired.
Right. Let's move on from quarterbacks because we've spent enough breath on those guys, right? Not like even they're that important. No. But which position group is worse as we know it right now? for the 2024 class? Running backs or tight ends?
Depth. Tight ends probably. Like it's Brock Bowers and JT Sanders, and then and then like a fullback tight end hybrid.
Cade Stover is probably number 3 at this
like a
point.
converted linebacker who could be fun. Like Ben Sinnott from Kansas State, like could be fun. He's a Senior Bowler. Like I like him. But like Ben Yurosek, I actually was really high on him, and he just announced he's transferring. So I don't know, man. It's a bunch of like So if Luke Lachey somehow decides to go, like he could be that guy that rises up in round 2, like Musgrave did this past year. Like Musgrave didn't even hardly play, but he was just an athlete, and then he got the capital. That's like that. That would happen because Lachey is an Iowa tight end, and he's a monster athlete. But man,
Yes, they are.
Yeah, the depth is a problem, but the elite options at running back, we don't have one. Like I really like Trey Benson. I really like that Braylon Allen is a massive person and could throw around small vehicles when he was 17. But and there's several others that Bucky Irving is like hyper efficient. That's intriguing. But all the excitement is at quarterback and wide receiver in this class. So I think that's where we are. We're not in like where I live and where Shane lives with dynasty drafts and things like that. Like we're not even going to see a first round rookie draft pick for like at all for running backs. And the only one that's going to be remotely interesting really is Brock Bowers at tight end. So it's not the normal class in that regard. We could see like this could be as bad as the 2014 group, like with Sankey and Hyde and Hill.
Ooh.
Now we're assuming Henderson's going back to Ohio State. That's the rumor, right?
Look, he announced today he has not made a decision, so
yeah.
we'll see. But we'll see.
We need him to
we do.
He's got this year, man.
I am not unconvinced that Marshawn Lloyd doesn't end up being the first running back taken.
Wow, that's a pretty hot take right there, man.
Yeah, I don't think he's
pretty smoky. Yeah. I mean, and seriously, Trey Benson's really in the mix. Like right now,
Benson, if Henderson goes back, will be my RB1.
Yeah, Benson's like right now by the mock data, he would be running back 1 without Henderson there. So like you said, the listeners were ashamed of how many mock drafts they've read. Guys, I've got a database that I just live in, and that has over 200 mocks in it that I sift through like every day. So that makes you feel better. There you go. And Trey Benson is seriously like he's going to rise into fringe round 2 status because of even the noise that Henderson might be returning. But yeah, I like him, Allen. But after that, man, it's anybody's game to be that running back 3.
Has there been any trends in that mock draft data that's surprised you or been interesting here as of late, or even through the season, through the process?
It's been hilarious because nobody, like people that really follow the sport closely, nobody has any idea what to do with these tight ends. Like the total number of tight ends that ends up in some of these mocks that are like even like 7 rounds is like, hey, wait, that's not like a normal. We're not going to have 7 tight ends get drafted like in total, right? Like that's impossible, right? Really? And I'm like, man, no, that's not going to happen. Like we see more than that, like 12, 13, 14, something like that. But people don't even know whose name to put in the hat. There's like, I don't know, Eric All, I don't know, like Tyler Warren. Let's get hype on him. Like, I don't know. And it's not like he's a bad player. It's just like this is a weird class for tight end. So that following that trend has been funny because it's basically like Brock Bowers, JT Sanders, and then people like just shuffle a couple of names around. They don't know what to do with late rounds. They just would much rather throw in other positions than that. So the longer scale, like or deeper drafts, people just kind of forget the position exists. Same with running back. They just like throw names around in a hat. They're like, this week I'm going to go with Devin Neal, or this week, I like Devin Neal, but like, I don't know, Blake Watson, why not? And I'm like, it's just weird following the trend because people clearly don't know what to do with the depth of certain positions. And conversely, like at defense, like people seem super, super confident on and have been kind of take locky on certain defensive players this year. So really fun just to kind of track some trends this year a lot closer than I typically do. just to realize, man, there's a lot of take lock that really takes like 6-7 weeks or more to come off in certain mock drafts and throughout the year. And then when there's the depth issue, mock drafters like, I don't know, just they throw a dart and hit a name.
Like, it's fair. Look, in my 7 rounders, I've done that from time to time. You've seen it, Travis. So throw the dart.
Yeah, you just I mean, 256 picks, you're just throwing darts, right? That's
right.
I mean, it seems like that's what happens when you're watching the actual draft. So
yeah. Once you get outside like the top 80 picks, like, wait, you wide receiver from UT Martin? I didn't know that person existed.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You start in 6th, 7th round, you start seeing guys get, corners get drafted from D2 schools, and you're like,
what is life?
Who?
Yeah.
And it's you feel like it's dart throws, but most of the time, what ends up being, and it's what we will end up. We'll say the word special teams at least. Like, that'll be one of the biggest words in our word bubble over the next 4 months is special teams, because those guys on day 3 that when the team drafts them and you've never heard of them, that's why they're getting drafted.
Yeah. I will say the sexiest thing that people are more, just to be like not a negative Nancy, that's happening in the mock draft data is in the last like 60 or so mocks that I have in my data, we have 10 wide receivers going in the top 46 picks. That's probably not going to happen, but that just kind of goes to show like this class at the wide receiver position is really, really good. Like, so
it feels like we're saying that every year, and I'm just going to ask next about the wide receivers. I feel pretty good, right, about who wide receivers 1, 2, and 3 are. I mean, I feel like it's Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Adunze. If that's not the top 3, then who is above Adunze at least? But who's the next guys after that?
The consensus right now, after those 3, and that's pretty much become the ironclad consensus top 3, is Marvin Harrison, like slated to be like the 2nd overall pick in the draft. Malik Neighbors appears to be a pretty solid top 10 pick projection. Rome Odunze is slipping inside the top 15 with consistency actually recently. And then Keon Coleman has actually been the wide receiver 4 by consensus since really like week 1. Like, people just saw the what he did to LSU's secondary, and they're like, oh, this is LSU. We should think that this is awesome that he's doing this against this amazing defense. No. LSU turned out to be one of the worst defenses in the country. And he is basically the equivalent of dunking on middle schoolers at recess. So I am not on team Keon Coleman being wide receiver 4. Like, his consistent consensus rank right now in the mock data that I have is like 16th, like 15th or 16th overall, which is a little bit pricey when Emeka Egbuka is going 5-6 picks later by consensus, which just seems absolutely wrong. Like, if they just if Egbuka was just healthy this year, it wouldn't even be a conversation, because going into the year, and I think where we're probably going to land inevitably is that Egbuka is actually a top 3 wide receiver in this class.
If he's in this class.
Yeah, but I think he's going to be, because I think he's going to realize, oh, there's wait, I've been mock drafted in like 99% of mocks, and all my actual grade is first round from the people that matter. I think that, a lot of, I'm not sure. I know some people even just last week were waiting on their committee or board grades to get back to them to see what like the league says they should be. So maybe Egbuka says he's a 2nd rounder, and he's like, no, I'm not. I'm going to come back and be Chris Olave and be a top 12 pick next year. Maybe that happens, but I think he's still a top 5 at worst, probably draft capital wise in the class. So I would come out, man. Just get that guaranteed money. Like, Smith and Jigma missed this whole year and was still like pick 21 or whatever it was. So I think that's worst case for him.
No, that's fair. The receiver class is interesting for sure. Like you said, I mean, I think that depth kind of comes out. We kind of wrap things up, Travis. But I don't know. Give me a hot take or two. Like, what's something you think unexpected that's going to happen on draft day? Where we got a couple months to go here that people aren't seeing now. maybe something that you're seeing, or just a guess that you have that you think can play out here the next couple months?
I'll give you a few then. How about that? I think we see 7 wide receivers go in the first round.
Jeez.
Yep. I know that is like blasphemy. Like that shouldn't even be a conversation, right? I think it happens because I think we have
so I want to stop you there because I want to guess.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so we got Harrison Jr., Neighbors of Dunze, Egbuka. I'm going to go Worthy, Franklin, Coleman.
Yeah, those would be the ones. Yeah, because so I think you nailed it. And if it's not Franklin, it's Thomas. And if it's not Thomas, it's A.D. Mitchell. And if it's not A.D. Mitchell, it'll be some poor soul who just lost his job in the future by drafting Xavier Legette. And so like there's just so many options like to pick in that range that somebody is going to get that 7th wide receiver, in that like pick 31, 32 range. And so there's just so many good profiles, and then Xavier Legette in that top 10 wide receiver range that it's going to happen. Like it's an absurd class. Like the production profiles are crazy. The athleticism is going to be awesome. It's going to be really fun to see. And I know a lot of the guys who have access to like the verified like on-field tracking data, like Xavier Worthy is a first round pick. And if he is, then like our floor is like 6. And if anybody else goes, then it's 7.
2004, last time that happened.
Yep. So let's get ready because we need more and more wide receivers for the the QB3s who are going to be starting on NFL Sundays, as we've seen this year. Because when Tommy DeVito and Kenny Pickett and Zach Wilson and 47 other backups are who is throwing the ball, you need guys to bail them out. And this class is just stacked with those guys. And I didn't even mention like Devontae Walker. Like he's, Jalen McMillan. Like there's so many other guys that deserve early capital in this class that I'm pretty pumped. Oh, and the other thing, the other hot take maybe, Jaden Daniels is QB2 in the class. And when it's all said and done, and I'm not sure that's really hot takey at this point.
It's not.
So, like
I think myself and Shane both have kind of like come on around to that.
Yeah, I think just his mobility, like, he can thank Lamar Jackson for that, right? Because I mean, like, we needed to see that happen and him actually be like on an MVP level to believe that could happen again. And Jaden Daniels is going to benefit. He's probably going to be a top 6-7 pick, if not earlier. So. And I'm pumped to see it because, like, I was really high on him early on in his career. Looked like he was going to disappear, and now he's back and put up the best season like ever. So I'm excited to see that for him and for just anybody who appreciates good mobile quarterback play because it's a lot of fun. So, but beyond that, hot take stuff. Oh man, trying to give you a good one. Latu. Okay, let's go with Latu being a top 5 pick. I'm not sure if that's hot takey either, but
no.
Consensus. I think
I've been saying that since week 4, man. I mean,
that's fair. That's fair. The consensus for him is like fringe top 10, and some people think that the medicals are going to dock him, and that might happen. But all his rate stats are absurd, and I know that the whole UCLA front 7 was kind of crazy this year. They had 3 top 10 edge rushers for part of the year, the Murphy twins, and of course Latu in terms of pressure rate and a bunch of other key metrics that edge rushers, it matters for edge rush projection, but he was just an unreal alien. So deserves that kind of hype. In
fairness, they all jacked their rates up with the one Colorado game, right?
It doesn't hurt when you play Colorado. But I mean, seriously, it was just every single week, man. So pumped to see what he does at the next level.
All right, Travis, man, we appreciate you coming on tonight.
Yeah,
this was good stuff, especially with all the sack rate, stuff like that. It's something that nobody talks about, but they probably should. But tell everybody where we can find you and hear more about this stuff.
Yeah, Twitter is where or X actually. X is where I share most of my stuff now at @FF_Travis M. Yeah, so that's where you can find a bunch of the stuff that I share, including the model and a bunch of the mock draft data updates, and coming up soon, some fun stuff with recruiting I'm just going to dive into because signing day is coming up. So yeah, but thanks again for having me, guys. It's always good joining the show, and I hope to talk to you guys here soon.
Yeah, and we should say you're going to be posting a mock draft up for us on Monday, so
I am
look forward to that.
Yeah, just throwing a bunch of darts, learning from the best. seven rounds of dart throws.
Love it.
No, it's gonna be a lot of fun putting that together, and it will be informed by a lot of the data I dig into, as well as my own thoughts and where I think some trends might be headed with this capital projection stuff. So hope all the readers can look forward to that on Draft Countdown.
Yep, I will look forward to seeing where the Bengals are going when your mock draft coming up this week. Travis, man, again, thanks for coming on tonight.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was Travis May, who is no longer invited to the show, thanks to his trashing of South Carolina's two top-rated prospects in this draft.
I'm trying to tell you that Xavier Legette stinks, but you don't want to hear it, Brian. So
he does not. I will not hear it. Will not hear it.
Oh man, that'll be a fun. That's going to be a debate between us for this whole.
It appears that way for sure. That's
got
the
Travis on my side. I'm counting that in.
You got the data. I've got the heart and the eyes, baby. That's what we'll go.
The homerism. That's what you've got.
Whatever. All right. So again, man, Travis is a good dude, and that data, all that data, man, that he puts out is awesome to read. And I love the QBR stuff.
Look, he's commenting in the chat there. The next great Velus Jones profile for Xavier Legette. So
at least, man, give me Jonathan Mingo. At least.
At least some hope.
All right, Shane, we're going to do something a little bit different. Normally, we go to the prospect primer and we talk handily about every single game that we got as bowl game week 1 starts this week. There is 8 games, I believe, this week during week 1. So what I'm going to, since these games are not loaded with prospects, and the ones that do have teams in it that would have prospects in them, those guys ain't playing. So what I'm going to challenge you with, Shane, we're going to have fun here. I'm going to let you name one player that will play in each of these bowl games that you think has a shot to get drafted.
Oh, okay.
One guy.
Goodness gracious.
All right.
Yeah.
So we start with Saturday, the Myrtle Beach Bowl game. I'll be watching at 10 a.m. on ESPN. Georgia Southern and Ohio.
Does it have to be this draft that I think they'll get drafted? Or do I get a couple years, I guess? It's like a legit question. I'll go with Sam Wiggles, the wide receiver for Ohio, is probably the one guy because he does play some special teams. He's productive small receiver. Probably still doesn't happen, but he's probably the most likely in this game.
Okay, I'm going to change this now because I see where this is going. One player that makes an opening day NFL roster next year.
All right, there you go. There you go.
Is that better? Okay,
yeah, I'll take that.
Celebration Bowl, 11 a.m. on ABC, Shane. Florida A&M against Howard.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, Florida A&M's probably where these prospects are best. It's tough because I think they're all rated similarly. I think most of their prospects in this group probably make a camp. I'll swing for the fences here and go with I'll go with Cardell Thomas, their guard, a big 350 mover.
A big boy.
So I think the size and athleticism for Florida A&M, I'll go with that.
I will note, as I did on the primer, if a player is accepted an all-star invite, he's not going to be on this list, the list that we have on the site. So, because I'm just assuming that if they've accepted an all-star invite, they're not playing in one of these games.
Yeah, which is a little crazy. You think if you're going to an all-star game, that you'd maybe play in the bowl game. But yeah, last year we didn't have.
It didn't seem that way, did it?
Right, no.
Game I'll be at on Saturday, the New Orleans Bowl, Jacksonville State and Louisiana, 1:15 on ESPN. I'm with you. If there's one player on this, I'll take this one. One player that I think that will have a chance to be in a camp is Louisiana interior offensive lineman AJ Gilly Jr. I think is that one guy. I will say in maybe also Clay Webb, the interior offensive lineman in Jacksonville State, as well. Those two guys, but the two edge rushers from Jacksonville State, I don't know if they're going to be in this class or not, but those guys are sack producers for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I'm excited to get your report on this game. I think Gilly's probably the best player. I would agree with that.
Yeah. Cure Bowl, 2:30 p.m. on ABC, Shane. I'll also be watching this one, Appalachian State and Miami of Ohio. Whew. Tough call here. Let's go with App State linebacker Brendan Harrington, probably.
Yeah, once again, maybe on special teams can sneak on an opening day roster, but it's another rough game. I don't see a player on here that I feel confident in.
Yeah, I watched John Young, their interior offensive lineman at Miami. He's okay. New Mexico Bowl, Fresno State at New Mexico State, 4:45 p.m. ESPN. Shane, your first game up this year in the bowl season.
Yeah, like I get to, I get to kind of swing a little bit and wait a little bit for these to come out. So, there's actually a couple in this game that I think could have a shot to go. I would probably, if I had to pick opening day roster, go with John Huggins from New Mexico State, former big time recruit, Florida, Jackson State, height, weight, speed, safety. But I like Jalen Gill, the receiver for Fresno. I think could sneak onto a roster. He's a little versatile, so it's not a bad one.
Yeah, Gill I thought was the easy choice there. I mean, there's definitely going to be guys in this game here. The LA Bowl, Boise State and UCLA, 6:30 p.m. on ABC. I'll be watching this one, Shane, for sure. This is going to be one of the UCLA Murphys or Darius Wassau, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Gabe Murphy's a stud for sure. Both of them, Grayson Murphy too. I think they're both pretty good. It definitely got to get drafted.
Yeah, there's multiple guys from UCLA that's going to get drafted in that one. Independence Bowl, Cal, Texas Tech, 8:15 p.m. on ESPN. I'll be watching this one as well. The Shreveport. If this game gets early for this game, I don't feel like they had it this early before.
Yeah, I feel like it was a little bit later usually. Ultimately, I don't know. Another game, I think, with multiple players that you could point to for this one. I like a lot of the Cal players. I think if he declares, I think Jeremiah Hunter, their receiver, is more talented than he gets credit for. So I like him. I've been a Patrick McMorris, their safety, is a guy that could get drafted late as well. The Cal team especially is pretty good.
I feel like we've talked about Texas Tech tight end Baylor Cupp for a while too, right? Like he transferred from A&M, but he just never does anything.
Yeah, he was the number one rated tight end of his class and just hurt, injured, but has that size if the athleticism's come back. Intriguing.
Yeah. And wrapping it up on Monday, the famous Toastery Bowl should be in the Bahamas, but instead being played in Charlotte, 1:30 p.m. Shane, you'll be watching this one on ESPN between Old Dominion and Western Kentucky, and yuck.
Yeah, I don't think we anticipate Jason Henderson, the linebacker from Old Dominion, coming out. So you're kind of I don't even think there's a player here that's in a camp then, if that's the case.
No, Austin Reed, the quarterback from Western Kentucky, may or may not play in this game. I don't know,
if
but he has accepted a Shrine Bowl invitation. He would be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Austin Reed should be a day 3 pick.
As well as Malachi Corey's definitely not playing in that game, right?
I would be surprised because he is Malachi Corey, the receiver, Western Kentucky. I mean, he's got some Deebo Samuel in his game thrown back to your Gamecocks.
Yeah, I can see that. All right. Speaking of the Senior Bowl and Malachi Corley, I got a feeling I don't think we talked about him last week. We didn't, so we'll be talking about him in just a few minutes. Here on the Senior Bowl acceptances now, several this week, and we start with the easiest one of all. We knew it was coming. You didn't want to predict it, Shane, but you had to.
Yeah.
Alabama kicker Will Reichert coming to the Senior Bowl.
Look, Will Reichert had a really good year this year. Like he improved tremendously. Last year when he got the invite last year. I was like, wow, that's rough. Over Jake Moody, by the way, he went in the third round. Ended up not taking it, going back to school. But he much better this year. I think he could be a draftable kicker this year. So I'm kind of eating crow on my Will Reichert hate.
Rule of thumb is if it's a kicker, punter, or long snapper with any salt at all as a prospect, and they're draft eligible, they will be at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, Bama.
Yeah. A guy we both, I think, like is one of the better interior offensive line prospects in this class, Georgia Cedric Von Prawn, has accepted his invite.
I'm excited for that. I thought he could have been maybe a high second round pick last year, came back, rock solid, really was the leader of that offensive line. So I think Cedric Von Prawn's a starting NFL center.
The interior defensive line prospect from Illinois we never talk about is Keith Randolph. He's accepted his invite.
He's had a good year. You wonder sometimes, is it because you're
playing next to Jazon
Newton? It kind of helps, but definitely deserved with how good that Illinois front, interior was on the defensive line.
Probably a nickel, I think, at the next level, but Kentucky's Andrew Phillips at corner has accepted.
He's a guy with some really good ball skills, which is always fun at the Senior Bowl. I think when you have corners that are willing to attack the ball, especially in the one-on-ones, I agree. I think he's more of a slot player, but has that toughness to him. I didn't expect it, but intrigued.
Minnesota's massive tight end, 6'7", 270, Brevin Spann-Ford has accepted his invite.
Did barely anything this season. Minnesota stopped passing the ball and they realized they couldn't do it. But Brevin Spann-Ford, huge, like you said, but athletic, so has never really put it all together. So interested to see if he turns some heads.
That's another, we were just kind of talking about with Travis. This tight end class is just poo-poo. Yeah. A Mobile native, Davidson High School here in Mobile, Cedric Johnson, edge rusher from Ole Miss, is going to be at the Senior Bowl.
I really like Cedric Johnson. I feel like I'm alone in my I think he's an athletic freak and has the pressure ability. So I'm excited. I think he's going to do really well.
A wide receiver whose name could be moving on up after the Senior Bowl is North Carolina's Tez Walker. He's been talked about a lot this year because of the stupid NCAA shenanigans. That, by the way, the NCAA now, as of today, will know because they lost in court. And that's the only reason that this is even a thing now. The state of Ohio basically blocked it. And now the NCAA is like, okay, we will now comply. They will no longer block multi-time transfers. No waivers required. Just go all you want. That's what kept Tez Walker out of the first 3 or 4 games this season. That will never happen again to another player.
I think Tez Walker's going to he's going to be the Tank Dell of this year. I think Tez Walker's going to be open every single rep, and everyone's going to come
wild because he's much bigger than Tank Dell.
Much bigger. He is, but he has, I think, similar athleticism. I think people are going to come away from the Senior Bowl saying, like, Tez Walker should be a first-round pick.
Late this afternoon, a second Notre Dame linebacker got an invite. This one was at the Shrine, is no longer. Notre Dame linebacker JT Bertrand becomes the third Irish player to accept an invite.
You got to have the Irish represented. I had Bertrand rated as the higher linebacker, so makes me feel better, in my watch that they both got an invite. I think Bertrand's kind of that solid in the box tackle machine type of hard-nosed linebacker, old school.
I think we maybe were higher on him in the preseason than what we ended up, but Oklahoma interior offensive lineman Andrew Rame accepted his invite today.
Yeah, I thought he had a rough year run blocking. I think the pass blocking's there, so zone scheme, I think Rame could be really good. Senior Bowl's going to be a good chance for him to kind of rehab that stock and get back to the top 100 potentially.
A player I know very little about I had very little in my notes about him, but Oregon State safety Keaton Oladapo to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, he's had a heck of a year. He's been a guy that's moved up my list a couple of times. Big, kind of rangy, and man, I mean, a tackle machine. They blitzed him, safety blitzes, so just very versatile. It's going to be intriguing. I'm interested to see how they use him at the Senior Bowl.
A pair of Nittany Lions accepted in the last week on the defensive side. One is their edge rusher, Adiza Isaac, big production this year, opposite of Chop Robinson.
Yeah, and I've liked him for a while, really broke out this season.
And the other was corner Johnny Dixon.
Rock solid. I think Johnny Dixon, teams started going after him and he made them pay and they went back to Caleb King. It was easier sometimes going back after the more highly touted corners. So Johnny Dixon earned it this year.
I mentioned him earlier as I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up at running back 1 at some point, and that's Southern Cal running back Marshawn Lloyd will be at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, well-deserved. Has had a pretty good career, former top recruit. It's a good opportunity for him.
And your number 1 kicker, Shane, Joshua Carty, Stanford, going to be here.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. He's definitely not a Jake Moody or anything like that, but had some clutch kicks this season, can go big distance kicks. I'm a Joshua Carty fan.
3 quarterbacks have been invited to the Senior Bowl. Joe Milton is QB3 of those 3, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. I'm excited for you and Paul to see it. I think it'll be fun to watch Joe Milton, the quarterback of Tennessee, close up. He's huge and has a huge arm. But, I don't know what he can hit consistently. Maybe the offseason is going to be just really good for him, and he gets some hype.
We'll see. I don't know. I think people want him to be Anthony Richardson at this point, and I don't know that that's going to be it.
No, it's clearly not. He's kind of flamed out everywhere he's gone.
You mentioned that Tez Walker could be this year's Tank Dell. I think this year's Tank Dell is Texas A&M's Anais Smith.
Yeah, man. He just I really liked Anais Smith, 3 years ago. That's my problem with Anais Smith, but he definitely could be. He has versatility. They used him a lot this season, but has had some injuries too in the past. So I'm interested to see because his hype kind of has died for a guy that was a receiver running back hybrid.
He's just built rock solid though. He's built just going to be a great slot receiver, I think. The other Aggie that accepted this week was defensive lineman McKinley Jackson.
A huge upside. He just has never put it all together, but in terms of first step, athleticism, burst, McKinley Jackson is super impressive. I could see McKinley Jackson being the talk of the Senior Bowl or just disappearing for a week. It wouldn't surprise me either way.
We mentioned a little bit briefly Debo Samuel-esque Malachi Corley, Western Kentucky, accepted his invite. Another interior offensive lineman from Wisconsin, Tanner Bortolini.
There you go, Tanner Bortolini. It was I was a little bit surprised to see him invited. Definitely a guy I need to go back to. You and I talked about privately, I need to go back to. But Wisconsin offensive lineman, I'll always take it.
It's almost like you give him the benefit of the doubt, right?
Right. Okay, he's probably gonna be solid, right?
And last but not least, the first of the Washington Huskies that we knew have been invited, the only one thus far to accept. And the question will be, will he play offensive tackle? That's where I currently have him at. Or will he kick inside the guard? My guess is he's going to play both at the Senior Bowl, and that's Troy Fautanu.
Yeah, Troy Fautanu, I think, is a firm first-round pick. The Senior Bowl showing off that versatility. It's just going to be where teams prefer him to play. So I do hope we get to see both.
So that was a lot of acceptances this week. Quickly, we'll get through some underclassmen here that have declared. wanted to make a quick note because underclassmen can play in the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. They have created a soft deadline for underclassmen to declare to be eligible for the All-Star games of January the 5th, where the normal deadline for underclassmen to declare is January the 15th. With that being said, we had 5 underclassmen declare this week. One, obviously, Drake May, no doubt about it, right? Top 10 pick. We've got at this point. We've talked about him a lot already tonight. We briefly talked about Oregon's Bucky Irving, but I think he's a running back. He's a bit undersized at 5'10", 175 is his listed weight, but he's really fun to watch and runs tough.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's bulked up hopefully a little bit this year to at least get in the 180s. I think the NFL is going to like him. Maybe some day 2 potential because of the pass catching and explosiveness.
A pair of offensive tackles declared within today, I believe. One, no doubter, was Joe Alt from Notre Dame, a top 10 pick. We talked about a lot on this show. The other is a guy that you've written about, but maybe a little surprising that he declared, Kingsley Salmatea from BYU.
I was a little surprised because I wrote about him and then his play kind of fell off a bit, but I think the upside of Kingsley Salmatea is off the charts. So he could still get into the first round.
And finally, the last underclassman that declared this week, a guy we have not talked about a lot on this show, but could end up being perhaps the top interior offensive lineman drafted or one of the, and that's Oregon's Jackson Powers Johnson, 6'3", 319, center for the Ducks, correct?
Yeah, center for them. I've mentioned him a couple times on the show. I mean, he definitely impressed me late. I think he's going to contend for that top spot just with the consistency this year. But yeah, kind of came out of nowhere to do it this season. But Jackson Powers Johnson zone scheme, team's going to like him.
Yeah, he's fun. All right, so we had a few questions in the chat. We'll get to those. Sonny, who's had multiple things tonight, say congrats on the credentials. He's an employee of R+L Carriers, so have fun at that bowl. Sonny, my day job, I do a lot of business with R+L Carriers, so you work for a very good organization there. And he had one other question. He said, don't know how to deep down the rabbit hole you guys will get, but any guesses if a team jumps up to 1 for the Bears? So that's saying the Bears we're going to keep Justin Fields, and we're going to sell number 1 for the farm. Guesses on the team that would make that jump?
Yeah, I mean, if the Bears do make that decision, man, yeah, I almost feel like it probably would be like the Raiders at 6. You know, right now we're at 6. We'll see how it goes. But if they creep up a little bit more, I think they could be at. And he mentioned the Giants, which I think is a good possibility if they keep winning, especially. They feel like the rest of their team's rock solid. You know, I think to move up to 1, you have to feel like your team is pretty good. So I wouldn't discount that.
Last question from Wyatt Johnson. What's the dream pick for the Chargers, draft and coach? Because we all assume that at this point, Brandon Staley's on his ass.
Yeah, I mean, I think coach is Bill Belichick. I think that rumor's been out there, and I think if you're the Chargers, like, it could be a really good thing. I will take the greatest coach in NFL history. Like, I'll take a shot at him again, right? You know, I'll take the chance. Maybe don't give him GM power. I think that's the only thing. In terms of the draft, I think the Chargers are tough. I think Jerzon Newton would probably be the slam dunk pick. I mean, fix that defense up front. Just give you some run defense. I think that would be great.
How high do they end up? Like if they end up let's say right now they're at the bottom of the 5 and 8. Like let's say they end up at pick 5. You know, like they lose out. I mean, is some maybe if Marvin Harrison Jr. is on the board? Is that something you consider?
I mean, you just took Quentin Johnston. You have Keenan. I guess so. You let Mike Williams go. You could do that. I guess maybe you could take a right tackle. Like that doesn't feel great, right? It's a problem with the Chargers.
Yeah,
They don't
because I mean,
have it. Yeah.
right, you've got Mack and Bosa on the edge, right? So you're not looking
Mac,
at one of
Bosa,
those guys.
and Tuipolatu from this past year's doing
Right,
good.
right. So Newton feels good. Maybe depending on where they're at, Bowers is in the
Yeah,
conversation.
but Bowers could be a conversation. But they're playing the Raiders. They could win this week, even with Easton Stick, and then they'll probably lose out after that.
That's fair. All right. That's going to do it for tonight's show. Final thoughts, Shane, on everything we've talked about tonight and some other stuff going on at the site.
Yeah, it was great having Travis on. He's going to have a 7-round mock, hopefully 7 rounds on Monday. So keep an eye out for that. I released today full breakdown of Jaden Daniels, kind of my evaluation history. I used one of Travis's charts that we talked about QBR. I used that in the piece. So go check it out if you're interested. I try to make the argument, he's a top 10 pick. I think people are coming around, but not there yet. Not where Brian and I are.
I'm there. But yeah, I mean, for me, over the next 3 weeks, it's going to be all bowl games all the time. I mean, I'll be writing my normal prospect review stuff from the bowl games that I watch, as well as reports on the 2 bowl games that I'll be at in person, as well the day of those games, the next 2 Saturdays. And then, I have a mock draft coming up. I think my next one is the one after Travis. So the following Monday. So will I go back to 2 rounds, Shane? We'll see. See how I feel.
Maybe they can make it happen.
We'll see. All right. That's going to do it for tonight's edition of the Draft Countdown Podcast. As always, if you're new to us on the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button and like the videos. If you're listening to this audio version, be it on Apple, be it on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your audio podcasts on a daily basis, give us a 5-star review there. Give us a nice rating, comment on that, share it out, good stuff like that. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Follow Shane on Twitter at Shane P. Howell. Follow Draft Countdown on Twitter at Draft Countdown. And go to draftcountdown.com for all your daily draft needs. For Shane, I'm Brian. Good night, everybody.